Good evening. Welcome, everyone. I want to thank everybody for coming to this online program of the American Writers Museum. My name is Allison Sansoni. I'm the program director here at the AWM. Just got a few short housekeeping things before we begin tonight, because I know you didn't come here to listen to me. If you like the kinds of programs that you're seeing from the AWM, you can join the museum as a member at americanwritersmuseum.org and get advance notice and special access to our upcoming exhibits and events. We hope to see you all in Chicago at our museum in the coming months and at our virtual, hybrid, and in-person programs often. Our book selling partner when we're open and here online is Seminary Co-op Bookstore. Once the event begins, we'll post a link in the chat to order tonight's book from them. And we'll do it again before the end of the night. So check that for ordering information. As you're watching tonight's program, if you have a question for our guests, please type it into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We're going to monitor that for questions, and we may get a chance to read yours out. We're sorry if we can't get to all the questions, but we'll do our best to ask as many as we can. I want to give a special welcome tonight to our Chicago Public School students and all our students and educators who are attending tonight. Thank you for all your support of the past, present, and future of American writing. We're here tonight to talk about RESPECT, about music and movement and movements, about a great singer and where and when and why she sang. Hanif Abdurraqib and Ashley Evans' new picture book, Sing Aretha Sing, brings the legendary gospel singer's work to life through the lens of her best known song, the Otis Redding anthem she made her own to uplift a community in struggle. Hanif is a poet, essayist, and cultural critic. His work has been published in the New York Times, the New Yorker, Pitchfork, Pen America, Muzzle and Vinyl. He's the author of multiple books, including They Can't Kill Us Until They Kill Us, which was named a Book of the Year by BuzzFeed, Esquire, and NPR, among many others, and Go Ahead in the Rain, Notes to a Tribe Called Quest, a New York Times bestseller and Kirkus Prize nominee. He lives in Columbus, Ohio. Ashley Evans is an artist and the illustrator of the popular book Welcome to the Party by Gabrielle Union. When she's not creating art, you can find her decorating cakes, enjoying time with her family, or catching a much-needed nap. Born and raised in Queens, New York, she now lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. Going to bring them both into our room tonight so that we can chat about respect. Welcome to you both.
Hi.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for being here with us.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
I wanted to start just by showing folks, provided neither of you object, I wanted to show folks a couple of pages from the book just so they can get an idea, because it's such a beautiful and powerful representation of Aretha Franklin. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. There we go. So we can see some of these beautiful images that you've put together. And I wanted to ask, just to kind of get us started as we're talking, how you came to Aretha Franklin as a subject.
Well, yeah, I mean, shortly after she had passed is when I kind of got approached about considering writing a book for young folks, picture book. And that's a world that I had never been in. It's a world I'd never experienced. And I really wanted to, and it was free form. It was kind of like any topic you want or any idea you want. And, I knew there had been folks who had written books about Aretha, and now I think there are a great many books about singers. There's a great Nina Simone book and these kind of things. But I just kind of wanted to add to that catalog of work, in part because, when I was growing up, I think it would have been so great and useful for me to have some images to help jump off the page to accompany the kind of understanding that I was getting about sound and about musicians and about legacy. I mean, I grew up in a house where music was always playing, or music was a source of excitement. And, there weren't a lot of visual aids. This wasn't a time, dating myself, but this is when I was a kid, this is the time for the internet. And so I think just even presenting the imagination with some color and some coloring around the edges of a person's life felt like it was a good option. And Aretha Franklin was someone who was at the top of my mind. At the time I was working on A Little Devil in America, which came out last year, which is a nonfiction book. And I was really steeped in the essay about Aretha Franklin and Amazing Grace. And there's a way that I had begun to believe that there's, no matter how much there is to that has been said about Aretha Franklin, it can never be enough. And so I wanted to pursue that impulse.
She's meant so much to so many people, and settling. So how did you narrow it down into this one particular song and this particular moment?
Yeah, like it's tough because I knew that I'm someone who has gotten really good, for better or worse. I think it's a bit heartbreaking, but necessary tool at kind of writing in an almost immediate obituary type of piece about someone. And I think it's because you can't encapsulate a life, but I think that we can stretch out a moment. And everyone can kind of pick their moment to marvel at. And I'm fascinated by the transformation of the song Respect between as it like passed from Otis Redding's hand to Aretha's hands, and how more than that, I was really spending a lot of time immersed in these conversations and thoughts about where protest music is going, or these kind of conversations about soundtracks to a movement. And I felt like they were lacking some historical context, particularly around the civil rights movement, and not just around Respect, but how the gospel songs were the songs of these movements. And, Black women were often at the forefront of the singing in these movements and presenting songs for these movements. And so it felt like a good portion, a small portion of Aretha's life that I could kind of take and illuminate.
Ashley, how did you come to this project?
Well, actually, I drew a picture of Aretha shortly after her death, and I had posted it on Instagram, so that was my way of, honoring her. I just like drew a really quick picture of her. And one of my agents, well, the person who ended up becoming my agent, no, actually, I think it was the editor from FSG. She found it and she was like, oh my God. And then my agents reached out to me and asked me if I would be interested in working on this project. This was actually the first book the first major book I got approached to illustrate. So it's actually really cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
One of the things I was struck by when I was reading it and when I was looking at it, there's such a sense of joy in this book, and there's such a sense of celebration even within struggle. Can you talk about why it was important to both of you to sort of represent that?
I feel like Ashley can answer this better. I will say that it was important for me when writing the book. And granted, it's so funny to think about even the writing of this book as writing a book. I wrote 1,200 words a few years ago, and then kind of passed it off, and it became something beautiful due to the work of Ashley and everyone at FSG. And so, but it was important in that small bit of time to not kind of cleanse history and make this a thing all about triumph, and also kind of lend a reality to the circumstances. And so that was vital. And I was concerned about how that would translate with art on the page. And, I'm really so thrilled at how this book balances both, pleasure and things like that, and struggle.
For me, I guess the joy came out in the colors that the color palette I chose for it. So the scenes with maybe protesting and stuff like that might have been a little bit darker than the other pages, when she was singing, or when she was receiving the Medal of Honor and things like that. So color script played a really big part of that. But I also think it's just one of those things about being Black too, is that even in the struggle, there's always this thread of joy that we seem to find and latch on to. So, I mean, I don't even know really how I was able to translate it. I guess it's just it was an innate thing, and then it came out in the artwork. So.
I I mean, it really makes the point really clearly that, she wasn't just singing to entertain. This wasn't just something she was doing to make people happy, although that certainly, was a part of it. She was doing it to uplift people and to send a message to her community.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, I did want to capture that too, in part because, like, I think Aretha Franklin's life, I think, was a life of immense purpose, and her performance. I'm captivated by the Amazing Grace documentary, and I hope that anyone watching this who hasn't seen it goes to watch it, because I think that best captures the fact that while Aretha Franklin's singing brought people great pleasure, as I am among the people, it was also a work of great purpose. I think growing up in the church and growing up with a father who preached and growing up around preachers and around gospel, that there's a purpose to the propulsion of that, of the church folk and the choir and all of these things that she's doing in Amazing Grace. A film in which, like, she's not, she doesn't speak much, she doesn't emote a whole lot, she just kind of like shows up and does the work. And I think I want to lend a little bit of that ethos to this book as well.
Mhm. We were talking a little bit before the webinar started, Ashley, about the photographs that you were looking at when you were drawing on those for resources. And I was wondering if you could both kind of tell us a little bit about what you drew on, whether there were documents, interviews. You've mentioned the film a little bit. What were your sources?
Yeah, I think I did pull like a reference from the Amazing Grace documentary too for stuff, but like it was a lot of Google for me and a lot of double checking to make sure that the stuff was actually from the year that it said it was from, making sure like the buses looked right, or the way the church looked, or the clothing that people wore, like, so that was, yeah, a lot of Google.
Yeah. Hanif, what other was there other reading that you found yourself having to do, or things that you found yourself looking for to track down for the book?
Yeah, I'm a really visual researcher, I feel like now. By that I mean, so much of my research in my early kind of writing life was text-based. And now I feel like so much of my research is visually based in terms of video, photo. So I watched a lot of performances of respect, both from Aretha and Otis Redding, just to kind of, this was more out of pleasure than anything else at the end of the day, but kind of just to get at the heart of, we say it's a different song as it passed through hands. I mean, it is really a different song. And to hear it in as many different ways as possible was, for me, revelatory, because I got to kind of explore what both of them seemed to be reaching for and asking for in the song. And so, yeah, that was thrilling for me as someone who's a bit of an archivist, to get to spend once again more and more time kind of hitting away at the ground and shoveling away at the Aretha and Otis connection and disconnect.
I mean, to dig into that a little bit, is when the song changed hands, and it did change, were there things that you found, performances that you found that you were like, oh, I never thought about it this way, or something that surprised you in those performances?
I don't know about surprise, but there's confirmation. One thing I say often is that, and this is, to be clear, like I am a big Otis Redding disciple as well, and I love Otis Redding a lot. I don't think Respect is Otis Redding's like strongest song, but like, what does that even mean when you're talking about Otis Redding? The man has, a scroll of songs. But the thing that I often say is kind of Otis's version of Respect seems to have the concern of give me what I want, and Aretha's central concern is pay me what you owe me. And I think those are two really different approaches and impulses, right? For Aretha, I think even in the ferocity and the approach and the kind of drawing out the spelling of the word, there's a repetition there that's a demand. Whereas Otis is, for me, felt a little more petulant, right? It's all about just like coming home from work and, getting what you want from your romantic partner, in this case, a woman, Otis Redding's case. And it's like, well, I mean, I know that's kind of what the songs were in some cases back then, and in some cases still now. But I think Aretha actually found something underneath that song that was more. There's always a doorway, like I think what I hear in covers and kind of remakes and these things like that, and I know this exchange was happening at almost like a higher rate, like in that era. But I love most how people are able to like find a doorway behind one song's meaning and open that door and take it to another place. And that's what I think Aretha was able to do with Respect.
Ashley, is music part of your process as well? Is there music you listen to when you're working? Did you do that in this case?
Yeah, music is a big part of my life because my mom always had music playing in the house. So, that's another reason why I was really excited to work on this project, because my mom's a huge Aretha fan. So that's why I dedicated, the drawings in this book to her. And but yeah, even now I listen to a lot of Aretha. And then I just kind of listen to like older music too that I grew up listening to, like the Manhattans and the Whispers and stuff like that the whole time I was working. So,
I love the Whispers. I'm so glad you said the Whispers. Yes. I feel like they don't get enough love in the kind of pantheon of soul groups,
Mm-hmm.
But I love the Whispers.
I adore them. They were my dad's favorite.
Incredible.
For the students that are tuning in tonight, I was wondering if you could both kind of talk a little bit about what your process is like, how you work, what the particularly what the role of collaboration and feedback is, and as well how you work together on this book.
What's fascinating is like we didn't communicate much.
No.
At all. Like I was very excited when Ashley came on because I knew Ashley's work. And one thing I didn't know, because I've never done a picture book before, is that it's just like hard to find illustrators because everyone's busy, And so like when we were going through a list of choices, Ashley was like a top choice for me. And so and it was funny because I feel like one thing that I was told before I think we went out was kind of like, well, illustrators are always busy, so you got to make a like list of like 20 or something like that. And I was like, that seems wild. But then I talked to my friends who'd done picture books, and they're like, oh yeah, you're not going to be able to find an illustrator for that. And so it was really gratifying for me that a top choice in the list was available, because, and I think like even knowing inherently how much work goes into the illustration of a book. It's one thing to know that inherently and be like, all right, yeah, this takes a while because this is work. Like I can't draw anything. So, but kind of getting to see that process, because I was getting like, files of the process as it was happening. It's just such a meticulous thing, and I'm just really thankful. So yeah, I mean, for me, it was mostly just kind of like a process of waiting and watching it unfold, which was really gratifying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. We didn't really get to talk. Everything kind of went through the agents and the publisher and everything. But I mean, as far as working on it, it was just, like I said in the beginning, it was a lot of like looking up images of Aretha, looking at images from like the 60s and 70s and stuff like that. And then was just sitting down and making myself draw.
Yeah.
It's not as glamorous or as intuitive as you might think. It's just like you sit down and
deadlines are a great motivator, right?
Yeah, you see what happens.
Yeah, I think we have this idea, people who don't work in publishing or who don't know, the back end of this. I think we have this idea that like the two of you would be huddled somewhere in like a cabin where you'd be, passing pages back and forth, and that's, that's how the work would do. It's interesting that it was this game of telephone.
Yeah.
I know folks who have worked on like graphic novels with a writer, and that's a bit more immersive in that way. but really, I mean, the thing I've been saying all week about this book is that I feel like I did a real fraction of the work here. Because I think it's difficult to look at someone else's language and then bring it to life artistically. You know, at least I imagine it has to be difficult because you're maybe not following your own, you're following the path that someone else made. And so, yeah, that's another reason why I'm appreciative. There's a way that I just can't imagine pursuing this from the standpoint that Ashley had to, because, you know, the words are kind of immovable. You know, the words are what they were, what they are. And I was so thrilled with the liberties and freedoms that jump out on the page because, you know, it's difficult to be like, these are the words, and you got to draw to the words, and the words are the words. And, but still, the book really moves, it moves in a beautiful way.
Thanks. I'm glad I was able to like accomplish that.
It's really energetic. Like, that's what I thought when I was reading it, that this is really, that there's a lot of movement here, that you feel like you're dancing to the song.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's also interesting to write a book for, like write a picture book and have a hand in the making of a picture book when I don't have, you know, I don't really have folks who are so young in my life that this would be a thing for them. And so I had to think primarily about like what I would want, like what I would want to have read to me. And a real challenge for me was writing in that way, like writing in a way that that has a cadence that parents would perhaps take to when it comes to reading to their young folks, or that young folks will pick up on and enjoy. Because I don't have too many young people in my life I could like try this one out on. I couldn't like run this through a focus group, you know, unless I used my dog, who would not respond in the same way. And so that was a delight, and that was a challenge, and it was a delightful challenge to pursue that, because I had to think about each word even more richly than I always do. I think I tend to think about words as instrumentation and language as instrumentation, but I really had to take to that with some immense thoughtfulness as I took this on.
I just want to remind folks as we're talking here that if you have a question, you should type it into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We're going to take a few audience questions in just a little bit. But Ashley, I wanted to ask, when we were talking about focus groups, are you focus grouping inside the house, outside? Are there trusted people that always look at your work? Do you rely on family? How do you sort of get feedback?
I rely on family, and like a big person is like my 5-year-old. So like if I draw something and she understands like what it's supposed to depict, then I'm like, all right, I'm on the like I'm doing a good job. You know, so
You've got a test market right in the house.
Yeah. Her big question is usually though, is every like little girl I draw her, she's like, is that me? And I'm like, not this time. But yeah.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think about when you're putting a project together, especially something like this, do you think about who you want to have read it? You know, you mentioned your younger self or family members. Do you think about where the work lands before you kind of send it out there?
I do, but like I also find that very like overwhelming, so I try not to think about it too much.
That's right. Yeah, and I feel like that has its limitations, you know, like it's maybe good to think about in a broad sense, but I think if you go too far down that rabbit hole, because it can be a little bit less than generous to the process itself. But also, I feel like that's maybe different for illustrators, because so much of Ashley, like so much of your work and so many other illustrators I know, is in a medium where, like, yes, of course, like some of this ends up in a book like this, but some of it is just like, I'm just going to post this on Instagram and have that kind of like immediate response to its presence. And that in some ways feels more daunting to me, because, yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess my question is, sorry, I'm taking over now. I feel like I've taken over, but when you like put, like you talk about how you put that photo of Aretha on Instagram, do you ever get anxious about like, this isn't, I did this really quickly and now I'm presenting it to the world and this isn't, I hope people treat it generously, but they might, yeah, I don't know. Are there ever anxieties with that kind of presentation?
Yeah, like a lot, because when I drew it, I was just like, I just did it out of like love for her and her music and like what she's contributed. And then it was like, but because it is my artwork, it's like, oh well, if only two people like it, then you kind of spiral like, oh my God, I'm the worst. But then
Yeah,
like, sometimes stuff going viral or getting really popular isn't necessarily great either,
I
because
know,
I'm with a
yeah.
lot of like stuff too. So it's like,
You got to find that middle ground, right? Like seeking the middle
exactly.
ground of like, I hope some people see this, but not all the people.
That's kind of how I feel about anything. Every time I put my artwork out, it's like, I hope this finds the people that appreciate it, and then like everyone else can just like bypass it, and I'll be okay.
Yeah, no, that's real. That's real.
Yeah.
What were the picture books that that meant a lot to you both growing up when you were of an age that that readers of your current book would be? What were the important books to you?
Ooh, well, I mean, I don't know, my mom always read to me, so that was two big things, right? Reading and music with her. As for Jack Keats, like anything by him was really big with me as a kid. Eric Carle, I like collage work, even though I don't do it myself. There were other books too, but I don't know who wrote them. Like there was an Anansi the Spider book that I used to
Oh,
like. And
yeah.
there was this book called like Ben Willie and the Zimwi that was really good when I was a kid. So stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, the Anansi Spider book I remember, I don't know if it's the same one, but it probably has to be, is by Gerald McDermott.
That
And
might
it's,
be it.
I remember it had like the spider on the cover with the arms coming down, the
It's like
leg,
red and black.
red and black. Yeah, yeah,
Yes, yeah,
yeah.
that's the one.
I love that book. And for me, it begins and ends really with Virginia Hamilton, The People Could Fly,
Yeah.
because Virginia Hamilton, who's like a great Ohioan, also from Dayton. And there was, I come from a story of people, a family of storytellers. And, I remember being of an age in elementary school and all that, where the folk tales, these like great American folk tales I was hearing was so, I was surely fascinated by them, but they just didn't involve, these mythologies didn't involve a lot of Black folks unless it was like John Henry,
Yeah.
which like that, which was horrifying to me. I remember John Henry, the John Henry mythology being presented as this kind of like testament to American labor or something. I remember being a kid and being like, this is terrifying. This man like literally worked himself to death.
Yeah.
And The People Could Fly was such a good exploration of the Black folktale in a way that centered freedom. And I love it. I mean, I still love it. I love that book so much. It means the world to me. And yeah, I am happy to have been a young person in the era of Virginia Hamilton's creation.
Folks, if you've got a question, please type it into the Q&A box. We're going to take a couple of questions. We're also getting a couple texted in here. Just double check and see where we're at with those. And I wanted to ask both of you, from this book, what other projects do you see growing out of it? Do you want to do something like this again? Do you want to do more of these? Is this kind of a one and done? Where is this a new direction?
I don't know if it's a new direction for me. I've pondered it because I did enjoy the process so much, and the team at FSG was so great to work with. And so I don't ever want to say, when I've had an experience like this and worked with people like that, I never want to say like, this is a one-off, I'll never approach again. But it's not something that's on the horizon for me at the moment. But I feel like, and I also just feel like I'm also very aware of the fact that this is not like the normal arena of my working container. And I'm always trying to make sure I'm not taking up too much space And so this was fun. I may do it again someday, but if not, then this was more than beautiful experience to last me a long time.
That's awesome. Um, I don't know. I mean, like, cause I'm gonna keep doing like children's illustration like as long as I can. As far as biographies, I like them, but I do like things that are a little more imaginative and like maybe not so much with like keeping to like drawing someone's very specific face and making sure
Yeah,
that you know who that person is.
yeah.
So I'm always like I'll always welcome like biographical things, but like I do like more imaginative work. So, you know, I would love to do like a Christian Robinson type book. Like, I love his work. So
Explore some different worlds,
yeah.
maybe. Yeah. Well, we've got a few questions coming in now, so we can take a couple of those. We have a question from Alex who wants to know, how have your relationships with your hometowns shaped the way you create and how you tap into your creative inspiration?
Yeah, I mean, I'm from Columbus, Ohio, and I live in the place I was born. I live close to the neighborhood I grew up in, and there's a comfort in the familiarity, even within a changing city, rapidly changing city, um, that makes me want to kind of cling to what I know and what I love. And so I feel like I'm often writing in the pursuit of, or creating in the pursuit of holding the temporary close, because I know that it is fleeting, and that is an experience that I've seen come to life in this city I still love a great deal.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm originally from Queens. So like if you pay attention to my work, if it's not a very specific place, it's always going to be vaguely in New York and like vaguely very specifically like in Queens. Like in one of my books, I drew my childhood home as the home of like the main character. So it's like it finds its way in. I'm your typical like New Yorker that can't like go more than 2 seconds without telling somebody that that's where I'm from. You know, like I'm down here in North Carolina now. I also I would love to do a book that's focused on Queens in the future, you know, but I don't know how I would go about writing that. I'm not really a writer. So it's like, you know, but yeah, I take New York with me everywhere and I put it in everything I do.
I have a question from Monica who wants to know, does seeing an illustrator's work after you've written text make you want to revise and reconsider your text? And was, in this case, was any of the text updated after the illustrations were made?
No, the text is the same. I wanted to keep it. I did have a moment where I saw the illustrations and I thought, well, can I do better to rise to the occasion of these illustrations? But I actually, I pulled back from that, or I sacrificed to that impulse, because that felt like a very ego-driven impulse, when in reality, what I think I was trying to unlock here was an understanding that the illustrations were as much a vehicle as the language. Illustrations themselves were a language. And you know, I don't know if for me collaboration is about always um, seeing something your collaborators created and saying, well, what about me? Or like, did I do the thing? Sometimes it's about asking myself a better question, which is, are my words a proper vessel for what these images are doing?
I have a question from Sarah who wants to know, Hanif, how does writing a picture book compare to your process for writing poetry?
Well, for me, in this case, I was surprised. There's only about 1,100 words, 1,200 words in this book. And so um, for me, I was kind of reverted back to, you know, I take musicality and language very seriously when I'm writing poems. You know, I'm someone who, again, really thinks of language as a symphonic tool. And I found myself really taking measure of the sparsity, I don't know if sparsity is a word, the sparseness, whatever, of the, what I had, you know, it was like, okay, when they told me like, here's the amount of words you have, to get to tell this whole story. I thought, oh no, that's just not the way my brain works. And so I did have to kind of take myself, my impulse was like, that's not how my brain works. But then the kind of poet part of my brain was like, wait a minute, but that is how your brain works. Here's countless examples of your brain working in that way. And so poetry was a real tool for me here, because I found myself pulling back towards, how do I make every word count? How do I tuck a miniature story into every sentence? How do I really make the amount of language I have worthwhile on the page? And that is a poetic impulse for me.
You have to consider the implications of every word when there's only so many that you're allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a question here from Kim, who's directed it at Hanif, but I want to sort of turn it to both of you. Kim wants to know, is writing an easy process for you? And Ashley, I would then ask, is drawing an easy process for you?
I'll let Ashley take that.
I'm gonna be honest, no, it's not. It's very intense, you know, especially when you're not drawing for yourself. So I don't know how to explain it, but like, I think drawing takes a lot longer than like people think, even I think artists, because you know, you see something and you're like, yeah, I can knock that out. And the next thing you know, it's like 8 hours later and you're like crying over your tablet because it doesn't look the way you want it to look. So, you know, but it's a labor of love. So it's not easy, but I love it.
No, writing isn't easy, but it is sometimes illuminating. And I'm always excited for the points when it can be illuminating.
That's awesome.
One of the things we hear a lot from students when they come in on field trips and tours to the museum is, you know, they're surprised to learn how much writers edit and how much they revise. And I'm sure, you know, for artists too, how many drafts, how many versions, how many times you start something and it doesn't turn out right. And so you have to crumple it up and throw it away and start again. And that, you know, the building in that sort of toughness to failure is really important to the creative process generally. And people are always surprised by that.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
We've got a question from Kristen who wants to know, can you describe, Hanif, how this book came to be from your essay? Were you thinking of it from the initial essay, or did you did you consider it afterwards?
No, I was thinking about it from the initial essay. Little Devil in America, there are 2 Aretha Franklin essays back to back. And I just realized that I just wasn't done evangelizing in a way. You know, it's like reframe the church again. You know, there's those sermons that kind of keep unfolding and unfolding and unfolding. And when you think that the preacher's done preaching, they've got something else, and then they got something else, and then they got something else. And so I was kind of carried on the wings of that, where it was like, I thought I had gotten through all of the things I felt and wanted to say about Aretha Franklin, but I had only barely scratched the surface, I think.
Do you know when to stop a story? How do you know when you've done, or when to stop drawing? How do you know when a work is completed?
As far as drawing, I'm gonna be honest, again, I don't know. It's if it's something that, like, you know, I'm sending to someone else, I know when to stop when they like don't ask for any more revisions or any more changes or tweaks or anything. But when it's something I'm working on myself, I literally just have to tell myself, like, Ashley, you have to stop, because you know, otherwise you're sitting there and I don't know, you know, sometimes you can mess something up by just like fiddling with it too much. So yeah.
I mean, I think I always ask myself, have I satiated my curiosity to a point that my curiosity or obsession or excitement to a point where it's also still serving a public? Because I can obsess over things and be excited over things in private and be equally satisfied. But I think there are points in the work where it's evident to me that I'm perhaps pursuing an excitement that is no longer serving myself and is instead is no longer serving the public in any way. even those who just wish to be spectators, kind of at the unfolding of that obsession. And then it's only feeding me. And that's when I think, well, maybe I'm done with this for now. But I always leave it for now. I always say for now. And see where things go from there.
A good way to look at it.
What are some topics that you've set aside that you may come back to later? Are there what are some of the loose ends sort of rattling around out there for both of you?
I mean, truly for me, it's everything in A Little Love of America. Just yesterday, that book opens with this really sprawling essay about Soul Train. And yesterday was the anniversary of Don Cornelius's death, or maybe it was Monday, obviously the days, but it was either yesterday or Monday. And I found myself once again, like hammering away at that interest and that excitement. So for me, it's everything that I've ever pursued is something that I've effectively sat down for the moment with hopes that that there's something new and exciting that can be illuminated in a return later.
It's funny that you mentioned Don Cornelius, because I think yesterday while I was working, I was listening to a podcast and you were on there talking about Soul Train.
Oh, that's hilarious. This is a perfect example of how there was a point where all I did was talk about and think about Soul Train for a long time.
That's so cool.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you about this book that you'd like to tell our audience tonight?
No, I'll just say, it was an honor to work with Ashley in this way, and I hope folks love the book as much as I have loved it. I've been just I have it in my hands right now, and ever since I got him sent to the house, I've been just looking at it. I've never played a part in a book that was such a rich visual experience. And so truly, no joke, every day I've just been kind of looking at it, not even paying attention to the words, just looking at it. And so I hope folks, just such rich details. Yeah, I don't know. I hope folks find it and get it for the young folks in their lives, and perhaps for themselves too.
Yeah, I just hope that people enjoy it, and maybe it'll inspire some new people to find Aretha's music and draw inspiration from that the way we have. So yeah. I hope that it's something that'll come from it.
I'm just going to tell people to check the chat. I'm going to send the link out again to purchase from our selling partners. So if you want to click in the middle there and in the chat window, you can follow that link to purchase the book. I want to thank both of you for being here with us tonight. This is such a wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for having me. And Ashley, it was good to talk with you. And thank you again for your work on this book.
Well, thanks for putting me at the top of your list and giving me the opportunity to even work on this. So it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much to both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe and warm.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night.
Thanks for coming tonight. Have a good evening.